Hey guys, how's it going? Today we'll be looking at the LG Nexus 5, also known as the Google Nexus 5. And I know this phone is really old. It's from 2013, so it's a 7-year-old phone. So why am I showing you guys this now? It's because I installed a new operating system on it, Ubuntu Touch, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit about that operating system. So first of all, let's go over the specs of this phone for those of you who want to have a throwback to how phones were like back in the day. This is a 5-inch device. Actually, I feel like this device is really comfortable to hold in the hand. And this is IMO, the perfect size for a phone. This is my XC1, my Sony Xperia XC1 Compact. Uh, Almost the same size as this phone, right? I feel like this is the perfect size. It just feels so comfortable to fit in my hand, right? Nowadays, phones are just way too big. But anyways, I don't think that phones will ever really get back down to this size again. 5-inch display, which I think is also the perfect display size. It's upgradable to Android 6, but it came with Android 4. Running a Snapdragon 800. I mean, that's how you know how old this phone was. 16 gigs of internal storage, 2 gigs of RAM. Yes, and an 8 megapixel f2.4 camera in the back, a 1.3 in the front, 1.3 megapixel camera. And yeah, you can see on the back it says LG Nexus, but of course people called it the Google Nexus because before the Pixel phone came out, Google actually used other I mean, technically the Pixel phones are made by other manufacturers too, but it wasn't labeled, the Nexus phones weren't labeled actually Google Nexus. It was actually just labeled the LG Nexus, or HTC branded several of their devices too. Now Pixel phones are just labeled with Google, right? So this was before Google branded their phones with their name. Look at the size of this lens in the back, right? This is how lens, I mean, if you look at my iPhone lens, it's like, it's got 3 lenses, and I think this is like the size of 2 of them put together. Wow. And this is only 5 megapixels, right? Oh, 8 megapixels, but it wasn't as good, you know. It's a worse lens, but it was bigger. And charged with micro USB, of course, back then. You had the power button, SIM card tray right here, headphone jack, as all phones had back then, and then the volume rockers. So yeah, the LG Nexus 5, pretty good phone back in the day. The Nexus phones were basically just like the Pixel phones. They were a showcase running the new version of Android, which at the time was Android 4 Ice Cream Sandwich. So I remember when Android 4 first came out, it was, back then Android wasn't very good. iOS was much better than Android. But I think starting with Android 4, this version, it started to be better than iOS. I think it started to be, I wouldn't say better, it was on par. It started to be on par with iOS, because back in the days of Android 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, it was much worse than iOS. And then with Android 4, they started catching up, right? And I would say by the time they got to Android 6, it fully caught up and was better in a lot of ways. So what I wanted to show you guys was this phone running Ubuntu Touch, the new operating system I put on it. I mean, I think some of you guys may want to see the old version of Android, but I'm not going to be doing that in this video. I'm going to be showing you guys the Ubuntu Touch running on this device. Now, Ubuntu Touch is the mobile version of Ubuntu. It was released in 2013, and it's still being continually updated up to the present day. So the last stable release was earlier this month, May 2020. So they're still going on this OS. So a lot of people may have forgotten that Ubuntu Touch existed, including myself, because I think in my Sailfish OS video I forgot to mention it. So even I forgot that Ubuntu Touch actually existed. But then some people in the comments said, hey, you should take a look at Ubuntu Touch and Lineage OS, and I did. So now I already did Lineage OS in another video. Now I'm going to try Ubuntu Touch. Now the problem with Ubuntu Touch is that there's actually not a lot of phones that actually have high support with it. So unfortunately, it seems like there's only a small list of phones that have high compatibility with Ubuntu Touch or are recommended by their website. And the LG Nexus 5 is one of them. So there's only a few phones on there. It's like LG Nexus 4. There's a BQ Aquarius, which is really hard to find. The Fairphone, which is also like a small brand, hard to find. And then the OnePlus One, which is the best compatibility with Ubuntu Touch. That one was actually pretty expensive to find on eBay. It's like $100. So I was like, I'm not paying $100 for OnePlus One because that's a 6-year-old phone. Instead, I got this one for $50, and I was like, that's better, right? Even though this phone is not as good as a OnePlus One, but I'm not paying $100 for a OnePlus One. So Anyways, there's only a small amount of devices that can support Ubuntu Touch, it seems like. But good news is I think the operating system actually runs pretty well on it. Now, the installation went okay. It wasn't as bad as the Lineage OS. So when I installed Lineage OS on Essential Phone, I had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops and I actually made a video about it. But for Ubuntu Touch, they have an installer that's made by UBports. So UBports made a nice installer for it, and you just unlock your bootloader, you connect it there. I think I ran into an error when I was doing it. I always ran into an error, and then I Googled it. I tried looking online, no solutions, and then I found out you can just ignore the error. So basically, when you get one of those errors, you can just ignore it, and you can continue the installation process in the recovery mode, which is what I did, and then it's installed successfully. So other than that one hiccup, I think that was fine. You just have to remember to ignore that error because it actually doesn't mean anything. It said something like ADB server version wasn't the same as client or something like that. And yeah, anyways, it's installed. And this is Ubuntu Touch. So as you can see, it has kind of the same feeling as Ubuntu, right? Ubuntu Linux. And I installed Ubuntu Linux onto my Dell Latitude a few years ago. This is basically the mobile version of it. You can see like even has that same kind of look and feel. So a few things with Ubuntu Touch, you can see that all the icons are on the side here, all the launcher icons. Usually in mobile operating systems, the dock is on the bottom. And I think this is just a wallpaper. I don't think you can put anything here. So yeah, I don't think you can put anything on this home screen here, which is unfortunate. You know, Chrome OS, I had the same problem. I really hate that they just have a wallpaper that you can't put anything on. But anyways, the launcher docs right here. These are your most recently used apps. Pull down from the top, you get a similar kind of notification or shortcut icon bar you should do in Android, except you can have like tabs here. So there's different tabs. So you have a notification tabs, you have a rotation tab, keyboard layout, files, location, Bluetooth, network, sound, battery, time and date. And this even shows you a calendar from up here in system. So yeah, this is different from the Android kind of shortcut bar. I feel like this is a little bit hard to navigate in some ways, especially if you're doing it one-handed, because there's so many tabs here. I think I'd much rather just have them all, you know, on one or two screens, just like on Android. But anyways, at least here you get more room. So you do get a little bit more detail and more room for each thing. It's basically almost just like going into the settings and doing this but you can do it just from the top there at a swipe, right? So it is pretty convenient, I guess. And I like how the Docker just goes away. That's a nice touch. So yeah, this is the launcher here, and if you press this icon, you can see all your apps that's been installed, and you can close it just like that. It's like a slide out drawer. You can open and close. And yes, it does have its own app store. So you have an Ubuntu Touch app store called Open Store. And I believe that Ubuntu Touch can run Android apps, though maybe not as seamlessly as Sailfish OS does it or Lineage OS. Well, Lineage OS is actually based on Android. But I think for Ubuntu Touch, there is a project called Ambox, which is Android in a box. And you can run Android applications on any Linux-based operating system because, you know, Android is originally based on Linux. But it requires a few other steps to do. Anyways, this is the native app store. Like I said, any mobile operating system that doesn't support Android apps is probably going to have a quick death. And so I think Ubuntu Touch, just like Sailfish and just like Lineage, it has to run Android apps in order to survive. But anyways, there's a reason why Ubuntu Touch has been continuously upgraded all the way up until the present day. So I assume that they have some good support for Android apps. So there are some apps here. You know, it's not going to be as numerous as the Android App Store, the Google Play Store, but you have it. Some basic apps, music, weather, a Facebook clone called Pestbook. Yeah. And yeah, again, not too many apps. You can definitely see that they're mostly in the double digits here, not even triple digits. So yeah, definitely this app store is not going to be as good as Android. But anyways, you have some apps here. You have Ubuntu Touch apps, which honestly, I didn't even think there will be a lot of. And oh yeah, you just press this from anywhere to go back. And if you ever want to multitask, you just swipe down from the right. And this is the multitasking window here, like you would have on Android when you press that menu button. You have that here, and a little bit of cool UI here, I think. So you, whoops, let's see what we got. So I always test the calculator. I know it's a little bit weird, but I think different calculators do look different on different operating systems. So it's a brace, yeah. Okay. Yep, there's a calculator. Calendar. Yep, so you have your typical PIM stuff here, agenda. Now, there is a little bit of lag because, this is a 2013 phone, but it doesn't, it runs okay. I mean, I'm not going to say it's super speedy or anything, but it runs okay. It's definitely usable on the Nexus 5. I think the OnePlus One would do better because it's a newer phone than this one, and that's probably why it's the top phone on there. But Nexus 5 runs this okay. Just a little bit laggy sometimes, but it's not too much. The camera, I'm not going to show you guys that because it's a very bad camera by today's standards. You have a clock, of course. Yep. You have the typical clock stuff, nothing special there. Just want to see that works. External drives, file manager. This comes with its own native file manager. Of course, it's Ubuntu. So, you can browse your internal storage here, and something that iOS only added recently, right, in the last few years, files. Before that, you couldn't even browse your files on iOS, but Android has always had it. Ubuntu has always had it. Gallery, this is your photo viewer. This is a photo I just took today, right? This is my room. Okay, so you can see the camera quality here. Yeah, not very good, but this is 2013. This is what we had in 2013, 2014. Can't believe we lived with that back then. Media player is to play your movies, your music, and you can open from your gallery browser, file manager, or camera. Messaging. Oh, actually, this is a media player. I think is for movies. Okay, music. There's a separate music app for this. Yep. Oh, welcome to music. Okay. Connect your device to computer, drag files to the music folder. Okay. Or does this have an micro SD card? I don't think this has a micro SD card. No, it doesn't. So there's no micro SD card on this phone. And you just have to add it to the internal storage, I guess, if you want to play music. Phone, let's check out the phone. The basics. Okay, nothing special here. Does it do landscape? Yes, it does landscape. Okay, cool. Just want to check to see some of these apps. Yep, okay, no problem. They do landscape just fine. And of course you have your shortcuts right here. This is all the apps I just opened, right? Pure Maps, I just installed this from the App Store actually. This is Ubuntu's Google Maps, essentially, their Maps app. And wow, it thinks I'm in the ocean somewhere. Great. Yes, I'm off the coast of Africa, guys. That's where you can find me. Yep, nothing special. This is a Maps app. The interface is very Android 4. All right, and they have a terminal, right? This is Linux, after all. You have a terminal, which is cool. And I'm just gonna type in my usual Linux commands here. So this is what we have, and then we'll just do like a simple command here, like echo. Yeah, okay. That works. That's Linux. I can even see my processes right here. All right, cool. So you have a terminal here, right? And UB Ports, what is this app? So UB Ports is the company or foundation that's kind of developing Ubuntu Touch after it got abandoned by Canonical, which is the original developer of Ubuntu Touch. But yeah, they're basically supporting Ubuntu Touch now. Become a spectator, become a game changer, and they always ask for donations because, Ubuntu is I mean Linux, right? Linux is a open operating system, so they don't really make money from it. So they always ask for donations. Let's change the future, innovate, and dream together. Okay. Weather app. Your basic weather app. Cannot determine your location. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to add Vancouver from here. What? Okay, here we go. Oh, here we go. And there we have the weather in lovely Vancouver. 12 degrees. Getting pretty chilly in the summer. All right. And Notes app, of course, you have that. Evernote, huh? I don't really use Evernote. So you notice that in a lot of Ubuntu Touch apps, you just pull down from the bottom to add something or to do an action. And that's how a lot of these apps work. So if we go to clock, right, pull down from the bottom, then I can access my alarms. Then if I go to calendar, pull down to add a new event. So a lot of these apps, you have to pull down from the bottom to do an action here, or a messaging, right? Yep, so messaging you pull down from the bottom to compose a message. So that's a lot of Ubuntu apps. And then let's just close some of these. That's a lot of apps I've opened. Let's close all of these. All right, let's look at the browser. So it's called Morph Browser. All right, so this is Morph Browser here, and I'm just going to go to a website I usually use for testing. So let's go to Engadget, and there it goes. It loads. Ooh, Lenovo Chromebook Duet. It's another hybrid Chromebook. So yeah, and then landscape mode is, of course, works. A little bit slow, but that's fine. It works. And then you just pull down from the bottom to add a new tab. So I can add another tab if I want to go back to NBC News. Right, so I pull down from the tab, have access to the website I just went to. Right, there's Engadget again. If I see NBC News, just pull down. Oh, wow, okay. Looks like there's still some issues with the browser. I wonder how old this browser is. And then, of course, you have your usual browser settings here and options. Yeah, anyways, guys, that is Ubuntu Touch. And what do you think about the operating system? I like it. I think it's pretty nice and fluid. I mean, it's pretty impressive that this operating system runs as well as it does on 7-year-old hardware. So I'm pretty impressed by that. I mean, imagine running this on a more modern hardware. I mean, the main problem is that Ubuntu Touch doesn't have the official compatibility for many of the modern phones. So that's why I had to get a Nexus 5, which is, you know, a really old phone to run Ubuntu Touch. Yeah, so that's why I had to get a really old phone like the Nexus 5 to run it. And that's kind of a disappointment. I mean, I really wish that Ubuntu Touch would be available for more modern phones. That's really my major problem with it. And of course, running Android apps is going to be a little bit of a chore, it looks like, to get Andbox on there. Yeah, it doesn't come with as easy access to Android apps as Sailfish and Lineage OS does. So yeah, you have to think about that as well. So I haven't shown you guys system settings yet, and we can take a look at that. So this is mostly similar to what you would find on Android. Well, a few things are different, right? You have flight mode, rotation lock up at the top here, Wi-Fi, cellular, Bluetooth, hotspot, VPN. Of course, that's usual. Background, this is the wallpaper here, and it comes with some Ubuntu art by default. But of course, you can change your wallpaper with a custom one. This is what you would add an image down below. And then sound, this is pretty much the same. Yep, usual options here, language and text. Display language, keyboard layout. Of course, you can add different keyboards. Keyboard theme, you can change the theme of your keyboard. I don't know what Suru Dark, Suru Black is. Yeah, the rest are pretty standard. Accounts, notifications. So you can add Evernote, Nextcloud, OwnCloud, Google account. Notifications, of course, you can control your notifications here. Slightly different than with Android, but of course, you can do that here as well. Battery, you see your battery time, of course. Libertine, okay, I actually don't know what this is. The Ubuntu Classic Application Manager, okay. So maybe people more familiar with Ubuntu can tell me what that is. Phone, this is services. Yeah, of course I don't have a SIM card in here, so not much I can do there. Mouse and touchpad. So it looks like you can use your Bluetooth mouse or touchpad with Ubuntu Touch, which is pretty interesting. Did not expect that. Time and date, of course. Nothing to see there. Yeah, nothing to see with brightness. You can change external display as well. Wireless display. You can choose a wireless display as well. Actually, we can connect to someone's Roku TV. That's not my TV. That's someone else's Roku TV. So I'm not going to broadcast to someone else's TV. Security and privacy, locking, unlocking, lock security. Of course, you can add a 4-digit passcode or a passphrase. There is no fingerprint sensor on this. They didn't really exist. I think the first fingerprint sensor on a phone that was really popular was the iPhone 5S, which launched like a little bit before this phone or around the same time as this phone. So yeah, this didn't have a fingerprint sensor. Let's see, when locked, allow. There's different permissions, stats on welcome screen, location, app permissions. You control all that. Of course, not in as much detail as on Lineage OS. I think that one's like the very security privacy focused one. Updates. You can check updates for your apps here. I kind of wish that, I don't know why it always brings me back up. About, so this you can tell is Ubuntu LG Nexus 5. You can see the IMEI number right here. The OS is running for Ubuntu 16.04, OTA 12, last updated just today. Developer mode, this is the developer mode for Ubuntu Touch, right? You don't need any kind of hidden shortcut like you need to activate on Android. And of course, this is your reset options. And yep, that's pretty much it. Everything else is pretty usual. VPN, you add a manual configuration. Whoa, that's a lot of Wi-Fi spots. No SIM, yeah. So everything else is there. That's the system settings for Ubuntu Touch. Yeah, I think the main problems with Ubuntu Touch is the fact that it runs on a very limited list of hardware, mostly older hardware, and the fact that you need to jump through a few hoops to get Android apps working on here. So that's the main problem. Otherwise, I think this is a nice operating system. It's very different from other operating systems I've tried. I think it's more different from Android than Sailfish or Lineage OS. So it is a pretty different operating system. I mean, it is Linux on a phone, right? It's a mobile version of Ubuntu. So it is pretty cool. It's something that you would see on, see if this does landscape. Yeah, it does. So it's something that you would see on, I would think a phone with a physical keyboard like the FX Tech Pro or the Cosmo Communicator by Planet Computers or the Gemini PDA. Those kind of phones would be really good for Linux, for running Ubuntu Touch, right? I think just a regular phone, I'm not sure about the value of running Ubuntu Touch on those phones. I mean, it's a very cool operating system, very different. The interface is pretty cool too. I like it, but I'm not sure whether it's worth it to install Ubuntu Touch for most people, even if you had compatible hardware, right? Like, I had to go out of my way to buy Nexus 5 to run this thing. I mean, yeah. Anyways, guys, that's the LG Nexus 5 running Ubuntu Touch. Again, I don't think that most people are going to jump through the hoops of finding compatible hardware for this operating system and then going through more hoops to install Android apps on it, or even just sticking with the native Ubuntu Touch OS apps, which are pretty limited. I don't think it's worth it for most people, but it is a cool operating system to have in my collection, as now I've tried a whole bunch of mobile operating systems already, right? WebOS, BlackBerry OS, Fire OS, Firefox OS, that was an old one as well. And then I've tried Lineage, Sailfish, obviously Android and iOS already, and now Ubuntu Touch. a Windows Phone as well. So I've tried all these different operating systems already. This is just another cool one to add to my collection, but I don't think that people would go out of their way to use this operating system. Like even if you did have compatible hardware, like even if you'd had Nexus 5 and you're still using it in 2020 for some reason, I don't think that you would go through the hoops of actually installing it and using it on this phone. So just for people like me who are tech geeks and we want to explore different flavors of different mobile operating systems, or you want to try something new, then it's cool. But I think for most people, yeah, stick with iOS and Android. And even if you wanted to try something different, go for Lineage or Sailfish. I think Ubuntu Touch is a very niche operating system. Although I give it props for still being supported to this day, right? Still being supported as of May 2020, latest release actually. So that's pretty cool. I just don't know about the value add of running this operating system. That's it, guys. Ubuntu Touch on the LG Nexus 5. Thanks for watching.